Hi, Fellowship family. My name is Jordan. I'm one of the elders here at Fellowship, and some of the elders wanted to share some words of encouragement as we continue to move through this unprecedented time with the COVID-19 pandemic. I know there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, but I think as believers, there's also a certain way that we're called to live, no matter what the circumstances are in our life, the circumstances around us, and the circumstances in front of us. And so I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking to you as a friend, as a fellow FMCer, and as one of your elders to hopefully bring some encouragement to all of us in the next few minutes. As some of the elders have shared as well, there's a handful of letters that make up the New Testament, and these are letters written from leaders like Paul and Peter and James and others, and they're written to people who are believers around the world who are in different kinds of circumstances. Many of those believers are also facing all kinds of things that they can't control. They're facing persecution. They're facing people who are telling lies about them, who don't understand the way of Jesus. They're in poverty. They're facing health scares. There's all kinds of things that the people of the New Testament are facing, and yet they're always called to live a Jesus-like lifestyle no matter what the circumstance, because Jesus really changes everything about the way that we live, the way that we think, the way that we treat other people, and especially the way that we operate under adverse circumstances. One of the letters that Paul writes is a letter called Colossians. He writes this letter to the people that live in a city called Colossae. Interestingly, though, Paul has never met these believers. He's heard about them. Some of Paul's fellow workers have gone there on missionary journeys, have given them instructions, have taught them about Jesus and the way to live. And there's a small church there that's at Colossae, and Paul's writing to them in the book of Colossians. As I've read through this book the last couple of weeks, there's a few things that stuck out to me that have been encouraging to me, and I want to share those things with you too today, hopefully as an encouragement to you as well. So the first thing is this. In chapter 1, Paul specifically says that the purpose he has in writing this letter to them as these new believers, this new church in Colossae that he's never met, he said his purpose is that they may have great endurance and patience. Great endurance and patience. Now, I don't know all the circumstances that the people of Colossae are facing, but they sound like they must be in a little bit of trouble or a little bit uncertain. Paul explains some of this later in the message, but he starts out his letter to the Colossians and he says, I want you to know how to have endurance, and I want you to know how to have patience. The interesting thing about endurance and patience is that at the very times in life that we're supposed to be learning them, these are also some of the hardest times in our lives that we may be experiencing. It's only through feeling like we want to get out of a situation that we actually learn to be patient. And it's only through adversity that we actually learn how to endure, how to press through, how to lean on our relationship with God and our relationship with the believers around us to actually get through the trials we're facing. Sadly, at times, it's only through great trial and great uncertainty that we learn endurance and patience. But these are virtues that are part of the way of the life of Jesus, because in Jesus, we can learn to be patient and we can learn to endure. First of all, because of Jesus' example for us, but second of all, because we're on our way somewhere far greater. We're on our way to the eternal kingdom with Jesus. And so our patience and our endurance now are unto our eventual time that will be with Jesus forever. The second thing I wanted to point out is that in chapter 2, Paul says, my goal is that you may be encouraged in heart and united in love. That you may be encouraged in heart and united in love. Paul focuses on this idea of unity because this is one of the ways that the enemy can try and really break up this new church in Colossae. If they can start infighting, if they can start disagreeing, if they can start spreading different truths around, this will break up the church. They will become disunified. They will become different pieces, and that would start to tear the church apart. So Paul says, I want you to be united in love for one another and love for God. This is one of the central things that's going to help these people endure and find patience if they can continue to be unified in the love they have for one another, which is born out of the love that they've experienced from Jesus. Paul goes on in chapter 3 to talk about this unity. He talks about how they're members of one body. And we see this language in many other places with Paul in many of his letters, the unity of the body, the oneness. And this unity is something that it's a part of the history of God's people, right? This has been true from the beginning. God's called them one family in the Old Testament, the people of Israel. And it's continued to be one family, one people. And new people are brought in. New people are grafted in, Paul says. Jesus opens the doors to all people, whether Israelites or not, and says everyone is welcome in the kingdom of light, in the kingdom of God. But this unity, Paul goes on to focus on this for this new church in Colossae. And then he says, in one paragraph, he says, be thankful 3 different times. So while they're learning endurance, while they're learning patience, while they're learning to be encouraged despite their circumstances, Paul says, continue to be thankful, even in spite of what may be going on in your life. All these things, friends, are truths for us. There is so much uncertainty. This is a different way of living, of being the family of God, a different way of relating to one another, a different way of working, a different way of being families and marriages. But, friends, I want to encourage you that as Jesus followers, continue to learn endurance, continue to grow in patience, be encouraged, be one with one another and one with other believers, and remember to be thankful. The last thing, before we end up our time here, the last thing that grabs me in this letter to Paul is at the very end, he throws in, oh, by the way, I'm in jail. Paul writes this whole long letter, 4 chapters worth. He's encouraging these people. His heart goes out to them. He's leading them. He's giving them wisdom. He's teaching them how to be the people of God. And then there's this footnote at the end. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm in jail, but don't worry about that. You see, Paul's circumstance was even worse than the people he was writing to. And yet, he focuses so selflessly on the truth that they need to hear. He loves them so unconditionally and so deeply and so greatly that his own circumstances become only a footnote, even though he is worse off than the people he's writing to. So friends, let that also be something that leads us and teaches us how to live right now. No matter how bad our circumstances might feel, I pray that for all of us fellowshippers, that we would be so selfless and so other-centered in this time that our own problems might become somewhat of a footnote because our great love for other people around us in this time. I hope this has been encouragement to you. Paul has much more to say in Colossians, and I encourage you to read that, to check that out, and to dive into that. Blessings, everyone. We pray that you're well, and we look forward to being together again soon. Peace.